Maya Carter stepped off the shuttle bus onto the airport tarmac, squinting against the harsh glare of the late afternoon sun. Her flight jacket was scuffed, the faded patches of past missions stitched over a leather shoulder like badges of honor, yet no one waiting in the terminal would have recognized her. Today, she was Ghost Angel, the call sign whispered through military circles and feared by adversaries overseas. Today, she was just a woman in jeans and a worn bomber jacket trying to catch a commercial flight home. But some people never saw beyond appearances. The airport's bustle surrounded her, families lugging bags, business travelers tapping impatiently at watches, janitors whistling as they pushed carts along the polished floors. She moved with purpose, glancing at the large flight information screens overhead, finding her gate. 12B. She had a 30-minute window before the plane closed its doors, a narrow margin she had timed meticulously. But as she approached, a man in a crisp uniform and pilot's epaulets caught sight of her. The captain of Flight 377 was a tall, narrow-shouldered man with a face trained to read threats in seconds, a skill honed over decades in commercial aviation. When he saw Maya standing near the cockpit, reaching for the door with a calm authority that belied her casual attire, he stiffened. "Ma'am," he barked, voice clipped, cutting through the chatter of the boarding passengers. "Passengers aren't allowed past this point, staff only." Maya froze mid-step. She could have smiled politely, shown him her boarding pass, but something about the tension in his stance told her logic would be wasted. She began, but the words caught in her throat. She was trained for negotiation, for hostile skis, for life-and-death decisions made in seconds, but she had never needed to argue with a man in a suit about staff access at a commercial terminal. The captain's expression hardened, and before she could explain, he stepped forward. "I said off, now." Security personnel appeared almost instantly, as if summoned by his command. They were polite, professional, but firm. Maya tried to comply, though every instinct in her body screamed against it. She had spent 8 years flying missions that governments couldn't admit existed, navigating enemy territory, disarming threats invisible to the naked eye. She had stared down danger without flinching. But here, in the sterile calm of a domestic airport, she was powerless against bureaucracy and a man's assumptions. One of the officers gently grasped her arm. "We need you to step back, ma'am." Her hands shook, not from fear but from frustration. Every fiber of her being resisted this humiliation. "I'm not staff, I'm." "Then you can wait for another flight." The captain cut her off, eyes cold, scanning the tarmac as if daring anyone to challenge him. Maya's stomach clenched. She knew the truth. Flight 377 was already in jeopardy. The message from headquarters had come hours earlier, a red alert buried in layers of encryption, potential hijack scenario. Flight 377 is a high-risk target. She had boarded specifically because of that intelligence, her presence meant to safeguard the passengers. And yet here she was, dismissed by someone who didn't recognize her authority, her experience, or her call sign, Ghost Angel. Minutes felt like hours as she was escorted down the jet bridge, the cabin lights and polished metal railings passing her like a taunting blur. She wanted to scream, to rip off the cuffs of this misunderstanding, but she restrained herself. She had learned long ago that losing control, even for a second, could cost lives. Her mind raced, running contingency after contingency. If Flight 377 departed without her, if the hijackers executed their plan, there would be no second chances. Reaching the terminal concourse, she finally freed her hands from the officer's gentle grip. She tugged her phone from her jacket pocket, the encrypted device humming quietly. "This is Maya," she whispered into the secure line, voice steady despite the rising panic in her chest. "Flight 377, I need immediate control of communications. Now." Static filled the other end, then a voice she recognized immediately, Commander Harris, her former squadron leader. "Maya, we see you, but the plane is already boarding. They've cleared you off." Her chest tightened. "I don't have time for formalities. They don't know it yet, but this flight is a target. I need you to scramble the response units immediately, patch me to air traffic. They need my guidance." Harris hesitated. "I can't protocol." "Protocol doesn't matter if 186 lives are at risk," Maya snapped, and for the first time that day, her anger seeped into her tone. She gritted her teeth. "I need to get back on board." But before she could make her move, a young passenger brushed past, gawking at her jacket. "Are you a pilot?" he asked, awe in his voice. Maya didn't answer, too focused on the larger danger looming in the skies above. The captain and crew, oblivious to the threat, were about to taxi out, and she had been barred. Her eyes flicked toward the control tower, seeing radar screens flash red as controllers murmured to each other. Something was off. The plane's flight path was jittering, small but noticeable deviations that no pilot would make lightly. She felt her stomach drop. The world seemed to slow as the implications hit her. If the aircraft was off its route, even slightly, the risk was immediate. A hijacker could board unnoticed. A passenger could be in on it. Flight 377 wasn't just a plane, it was a potential disaster in motion. And she was standing helpless, forced into the role of a spectator by someone who didn't understand that experience, skill, and instinct couldn't be measured by a uniform. She clenched her fists, ignoring the stares of curious travelers. Her mind raced through calculations. The plane's approximate speed, the altitude, fuel capacity, possible emergency maneuvers. Every variable mattered. Every second counted. Then came the first transmission over the airport's encrypted channels, garbled but unmistakable. Unidentified interference. Flight path deviation. Security alert. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She could almost see the hijacker's hands on the controls, calculating, planning, unaware that their target had already been identified, but that the one person who could stop them was no longer allowed near the aircraft. Maya's lips pressed into a thin line. She took a deep breath, calming the storm inside her. She had faced impossible odds before. She had navigated hostile airspace under fire, had landed aircraft after systems failed, had outsmarted enemies who underestimated her at every turn, and she would do it again. But now, in the sterile glare of the airport lights, with passengers oblivious to the danger, with the captain dismissing her as just a passenger, she realized something chilling. Every second she wasted out here was another second the hijackers gained control. Her eyes narrowed. She would not wait. She would not beg. She would find a way back, even if it meant defying protocol, outrunning security, and facing consequences later. Lives depended on it. Maya took a step toward the nearest service exit, scanning the tarmac. Her past missions flashed through her mind. Night operations in hostile territory, solo takeoffs under enemy fire, moments when the margin for error had been zero. She had always made the impossible possible. And now, for Flight 377, that impossible moment had arrived again. She tightened her grip on her phone, fingers brushing the edge of the call sign keypad. One look at the flight path on the encrypted terminal confirmed her worst fear. Flight 377 was already deviating, already vulnerable. She whispered the name that had once inspired fear and respect in the world's most lethal air forces, Ghost Angel. Her voice, calm but resolute, carried a promise. She would reclaim control. She would protect those on board. She would prove that appearances could not define capability, and that even a pilot kicked off a plane could command the sky itself. And somewhere above, the F-22 Raptors were beginning to scramble, the first glint of metal catching the late afternoon sun, drawn toward a target they didn't yet fully understand. Maya swallowed hard. She had seconds, maybe less, to turn humiliation into action, to transform disbelief into awe, to become the force they never saw coming. Because if she failed, 186 lives would vanish before anyone realized what had gone wrong. Her jaw tightened, her eyes blazed, and she ran, Maya's boots pounded against the polished airport tiles, echoing like distant thunder. Every step brought her closer to the operations center, closer to the radios, closer to the only way she could regain control of Flight 377. Her heart raced, a furious drumbeat against ribs that ached from the years spent in cockpit G-forces. But this was different. Here, speed alone wasn't enough. Timing, precision, authority, that was what mattered. As she approached the terminal's operations wing, a young agent blocked the doorway, hands lifted in polite caution. "Ma'am, I need you to step back. This area is restricted." Maya didn't pause. She grabbed the badge he dangled before her face, ignoring the trembling anger in her voice. "I'm not here for sightseeing. Flight 377 is in danger. I need immediate access. Now." The agent's eyes widened, high alert. "High critical, lives at stake," she spat. "You've got 8 minutes before it's too late." A moment passed. She could see the doubt flaring behind the agent's gaze, the hesitation that meant seconds lost. Then finally, he stepped aside, murmuring something into his radio. Maya didn't wait. She barreled into the operations room, scanning the banks of monitors and terminals like a predator hunting prey. Her eyes immediately locked onto the radar feed for Flight 377. Her stomach dropped. The plane was off its flight path, just a little but enough to trigger every alarm system. A red icon flashed over the East Coast airspace. Deviation detected, potential hijack. The room was full of agents, all typing and murmuring into headsets, but none of them had her experience. None of them knew the stakes, the way the air around a plane in danger vibrated with imminent catastrophe. She knew it the way a seasoned pilot knows the rhythm of her own heartbeat under extreme G-forces. She grabbed a headset from a stunned operator, yanking it over her ears. "Patch me to the tower," she commanded, voice sharp, unwavering. "And the F-22 flight in the vicinity. Now." Static crackled in her ear, followed by the clipped voice of the air traffic controller. "Flight 377, we're monitoring. Your presence. Do you have clearance?" Maya ignored the formality. "I don't have clearance, but I have information that you will need to prevent disaster. Hijack scenario, possible armed passengers. I need you to maintain control until I can coordinate with the aircraft directly." "Understood." There was a pause and then hesitation, but the radar blips told a story that no bureaucratic procedure could deny. The transponder code on Flight 377 flickered, an unmistakable signal. 7500, hijacking. Her pulse doubled. They didn't have time. Every moment the plane drifted, every second the hijackers maintained control, increased the risk of catastrophic loss. She darted toward another terminal, scrolling through passenger manifests, cross-referencing names, behaviors, and boarding logs. The hijackers weren't random. They had identified a target. And her call sign, her presence, they wanted her. She whispered under her breath, "Ghost Angel." One of the young agents leaned over her shoulder, eyes wide. "Who's Ghost Angel?" Maya didn't answer. They didn't need to know. What mattered was the plane, the threat, the lives that could be lost before anyone realized what was happening. She needed authority, and she needed it now. The phone in her hand vibrated, an encrypted message from headquarters. She swiped it open, scanning the text quickly. Immediate red alert. Flight 377 at risk. Hijack confirmed. Scramble interceptors. Call sign Ghost Angel required for identification. Her jaw tightened. It wasn't just the flight that was in danger. The hijackers were looking for her specifically. Someone on that plane had intelligence about her, someone who knew what she could do. And the captain who had thrown her off the aircraft, the man now hurtling toward a crisis he didn't understand, had no idea he had placed hundreds of lives at risk. Maya ran toward the exit leading to the tarmac, seeking a vantage point to signal the incoming Raptors. The F-22s were close, their sleek forms cutting through the sky, glinting in the afternoon sun. She recognized them instantly. Her old wingmen, pilots who had flown beside her during classified missions in hostile zones, trained to trust her judgment without hesitation. She grabbed a radio transmitter from a nearby cart, pressed it to her lips. "This is Ghost Angel," she said, voice low but commanding. "Flight 377, hijack in progress. Maintain formation and prepare for guidance. I'm on my way." The response was static at first, then recognition. "Ghost Angel, is that really you?" "Yes, confirmed," she said, urgency sharp in every syllable. "The plane has deviated from its course. Do not engage until I coordinate directly. We cannot risk civilian lives." The pilots' voices were tense, laden with disbelief and relief. "Understood, standing by." Maya's heart pounded, each beat echoing the stakes of the moment. But even as the Raptors closed in, she knew that the passengers on board Flight 377 were vulnerable, exposed, unaware of the peril in the skies above. The hijackers could be armed, clever, unpredictable. She had seconds to act, but no way onto the plane. She glanced around the tarmac for anything that could help. Her eyes landed on a small maintenance vehicle, keys dangling from the ignition. She sprinted toward it, grabbing the wheel, hot rolling toward the runway's edge. She would need access to the control tower, to the radios, to any means of communicating with the aircraft directly. The agent who had initially blocked her path shouted after her, but she ignored him, focusing on the clock ticking down. Every delay mattered. Every second could decide whether Flight 377 would land safely or plummet into chaos. Her encrypted phone buzzed again. Another message from headquarters. Hijackers demanding call sign Ghost Angel. Immediate action required. Her pulse froze. The hijackers weren't random opportunists. They were strategic, prepared, and already one step ahead. They knew she existed, and they had engineered this trap with her in mind. Maya tightened her jaw, hands gripping the steering wheel of the vehicle, knuckles white. She could hear the distant roar of the Raptors as they descended toward the airliner, wings cutting the sky in precision formation. Their sensors would pick up anomalies, but they needed her to guide them, and she wasn't on the plane. The thought sent a surge of adrenaline through her veins. She could not fail. She would not fail. The passengers, the crew, the captain who had dismissed her, every life depended on her next move. The distant tower doors opened as a controller ran out, shouting at her, "Stop, you're not cleared." Maya skidded to a halt, ignoring him. She leaped from the vehicle, racing toward the radio room with a single-minded focus, the world blurring around her. She could hear the faint murmur of alarms inside the cockpit of Flight 377. Something was wrong, something more than deviation. The hijackers were asserting control. Inside the radio room, she flung open the door. Terminals flickered, agents froze, and the world seemed to pause. She pressed a button on a console, linking directly to Flight 377. Her voice, calm but commanding, cut through the static. "This is Ghost Angel. I am taking control. I will guide you safely. Follow my instructions exactly." Silence met her words for a heartbeat too long. Then the captain's panicked voice came through, trembling with disbelief and fear. Who are you?" "Your worst mistake," she said, tight-lipped, steeling herself. "And your only hope." The radio crackled as the F-22s closed in, wings glinting against the sunset, ready to act. But they waited for her guidance, for the call sign only she could provide. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a single, chilling thought surfaced. The hijackers already knew her name, and they weren't going to let her walk away from this easily. The F-22 Raptors sliced through the sky with a predator's precision, engines roaring like thunder over the East Coast. Maya stood in the radio room, gripping the headset as her knuckles turned white. Each second brought Flight 377 closer to disaster. She could see the plane on the radar, wobbling slightly, erratic, a perfectly maintained terror like a hummingbird under stress. The hijackers had control, but only just, and she wasn't on board. Her voice trembled only slightly as she spoke into the microphone. "Flight 377, listen carefully. Keep your heading steady, maintain altitude. Do not make sudden maneuvers. There was static, then the captain's breathless reply. Who is this? You're not supposed to. I am Ghost Angel. I'm your only chance right now. Follow my instructions exactly, she cut him off, voice steady and commanding. Years of experience surged through her. Combat missions in hostile airspace, emergency landings under enemy fire, aircraft damaged beyond repair. She had survived them all. And now, a commercial plane filled with civilians relied on her skill. Outside, the Raptors banked in tight formation around Flight 377, the sun glinting off their sleek fuselages. Two pilots in each jet exchanged glances, faces hidden behind visors, but Maya recognized them instantly. Her old wingmen. They had flown missions with her in enemy territory, had trusted her with their lives. And now, despite disbelief and confusion, they were waiting for her call, her guidance. The hijackers inside the airliner didn't know what they were up against. One of them, a tall man with a shaved head, peered through the cockpit window, his fingers tightening around a black duffel bag of unknown contents. "Who is Ghost Angel?" he barked to the other, voice tight with panic. "They're coordinating military jets. How do they know? How can someone on the ground be controlling this?" Maya ignored them, her mind running 1,000 calculations per second. Flight paths, wind speed, altitude, fuel reserves, emergency protocols, passenger safety. They all had to be considered simultaneously. She tapped commands into the secure terminal, relaying instructions through the tower to the captain. Initiate minor course correction. Turn 3 degrees left. Do not exceed 300 knots. Maintain passenger calm. The captain hesitated, hands trembling on the controls. He had never flown under this level of stress, and certainly never with someone off-site directing him in a potential hijack scenario. 3 degrees left, understood, he murmured, voice tight. The plane shifted slightly, tilting into the minor course correction. Outside, the Raptors mirrored the movement flawlessly, wings angled just enough to maintain visual formation, a deadly choreography designed to intimidate, to protect, to contain. Maya's pulse raced. Every second she wasn't on board, every second she wasn't physically steering was a risk, but her knowledge and experience were enough. If she made a single miscalculation, the plane could descend into chaos. And then, the hijackers made their first real move. One of them lunged for the radio, pressing buttons, trying to jam communication. Maya's stomach dropped. The static she expected hit the channel like a wave, but she anticipated it. She tapped emergency override protocols she had helped design years ago, a secret layer of defense that only pilots with her clearance could access. The F-22s adjusted instantly, engines screaming as they repositioned to maintain visual coverage, wings cutting through the sky in lethal precision. "You're not going anywhere," Maya said through the microphone, voice icy. "Stand down or risk immediate engagement. The jets are armed and in formation. One wrong move and you won't get a second chance." For a moment, silence. Then the tall hijacker's voice, sharp with fury and disbelief. "If you're Ghost Angel, prove it." Maya's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't need to prove anything to them. They already knew her reputation. Her call sign whispered like a ghost through military and adversary channels alike. But she knew that fear was as much a weapon as firepower. "Look outside," she said softly, almost casually. Through the cockpit windows, the hijackers glimpsed the formation of F-22s surrounding them, wings angling in a V-shape, a formation reserved for the most elite pilots. The sudden realization that the pilot they sought, the one called Ghost Angel, was real, alive, and directing the response, caused a ripple of panic. Maya's fingers danced over the radio console, issuing coordinated instructions. "Maintain altitude. Do not react to sudden movements. Focus on my commands. The jets are your escort, not your enemy, unless you act against them." Inside the cabin, passengers murmured nervously, unaware of the deadly precision playing out just beyond their windows. Some instinctively clutched their seats, others stared at the ceiling. Hopping prayers alone could shield them. The hijackers shouted instructions to keep control of the cockpit, but uncertainty began to creep into their movements. Maya calculated each possibility, each potential move the hijackers might make. The plane's deviations were minor, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, but she knew the danger they represented. A sudden dive, a sharp turn, a misjudged maneuver, any could trigger catastrophe. Her heartbeat synchronized with the plane's vibrations as she guided the captain. Prepare for a controlled descent over the next 10 miles. Keep rate steady. Do not accelerate. Trust my guidance. The captain's hands were slick with sweat, voice quivering. Understood, Ghost Angel. I trust you. Maya allowed herself a brief nod. Trust was all she had now. The lives of 186 souls hanging by the thread of her reputation and expertise. Outside, the Raptors maintained deadly precision, ready to intervene at the slightest sign of aggression. Then an unexpected variable. The hijackers activated an emergency override, attempting to cut off the transponder entirely. Radar flickered, sending alarms blaring across the tower. Maya's stomach lurched. If the transponder went offline, air traffic control would lose visibility, and the Raptors' margin for error would shrink drastically. She pressed a series of keys, tapping into protocols hidden deep in the aircraft's systems, bypassing the override. Transponder online. You cannot hide from me, she said quietly, almost to herself. The hijackers froze, realizing they were no longer fully in control. Panic spread like wildfire. One of them turned to the other. They know everything. They can see us. Maya's gaze hardened. She could feel her old instincts taking over, the same instincts that had saved her and her squadron countless times. Focus, precision, strategy. Every command she gave now was a lifeline. One wrong word, one miscalculation, and Flight 377 could become a tomb in seconds. And yet she refused to panic. She was Ghost Angel. The world had underestimated her once again, but they would not underestimate her again. She took a deep breath, voice cutting through the static. I am taking control of this flight. Follow my guidance exactly and no one will be harmed. Attempt anything else and I cannot guarantee survival. Outside, the Raptors held formation, wings glinting like blades against the sun, ready for the worst, waiting for her instruction. Inside, the hijackers faltered, uncertainty and fear flooding their movements. And in that moment, hovering between calm and catastrophe, Maya Carter realized something chilling. The hijackers didn't just want control of the plane, they wanted her specifically. Someone on that aircraft had orchestrated this trap. Her pulse quickened. She had a mission now, a purpose beyond personal vindication. She had to save every life on board, and if she failed, the headlines would write her as a cautionary tale rather than a hero. She whispered under her breath, "Not today." Maya's fingers flew over the radio console, issuing commands, monitoring transponder signals, calculating every trajectory. The airspace around Flight 377 was congested with potential threats, yet the F-22s mirrored her intentions flawlessly, their pilots trusting a voice they couldn't see. And she couldn't be more aware of the gravity. One misstep could cost 186 lives. Every heartbeat, every decision, every word mattered. She leaned closer to the console as the cockpit audio crackled faintly. The captain's voice trembled, barely audible above static. Who are you? You shouldn't." "I am Ghost Angel," she interrupted, cutting through fear with precision. "And I am the only reason this plane will land safely." The captain swallowed audibly, a sound Maya had heard 1,000 times in combat. Raw, human fear mixed with trust when survival demanded it. "Understood, Ghost Angel. I'm listening." Outside the plane, the Raptors adjusted formation in perfect unison, wings slicing the clouds. Their presence wasn't just tactical, it was psychological. The hijackers had underestimated them, and now the very air around them felt hostile, constricting, orchestrated by an unseen hand. And that hand was Maya's. Inside the aircraft, tension crackled like electricity. The tall hijacker, sweating and pale, slammed his fist against the panel. "We can't let them see us falter. Control the plane." The younger accomplice's hands trembled as he glanced toward the cockpit window. "Who is Ghost Angel? How can someone not on the plane be controlling us?" Maya's pulse quickened. They didn't yet understand the extent of her abilities, and that was her advantage. She whispered into the radio, voice steady, low, controlled. "Flight 377, minor course adjustment, 3 degrees left. Maintain speed. Calm the passengers. You'll hear me guiding you step by step." The plane tilted slightly, obedient to her instructions, the captain's hands trembling on the controls. Outside, the Raptors mirrored the movement flawlessly. Maya's heart pounded as she calculated fuel, wind, and potential maneuvers for every emergency scenario simultaneously. One wrong command could send the plane spiraling into disaster. Then the unexpected. One hijacker lunged for the radio, pressing buttons with desperate force. Maya's stomach dropped. They were attempting to jam communications, cut off her guidance. She reacted instantly, training kicking in. Years of combat had taught her anticipation, precision, improvisation. Tapping a series of emergency override commands buried deep within the plane's avionics, she bypassed their attempt. The F-22s adjusted, engines screaming as they maintained formation, wings angled perfectly to control the airspace. "You're not going anywhere," Maya said, her voice now sharper, almost metallic in its precision. "Drop any attempt at control or you risk engagement from the jets. I promise you will not like the outcome." Inside the cockpit, silence. Fear spread across the hijackers' faces. They were professionals in their own right, but no training could prepare them for a pilot who wasn't even on the plane commanding lethal force from above. Maya's mind raced. The hijackers weren't random, they were strategic. Someone had planned this meticulously, and her call sign was the key. "Ghost Angel," they had whispered, a name meant to intimidate, but now she turned that fear against them. One of the hijackers grabbed a microphone, voice trembling with rage and disbelief. "If you're Ghost Angel, prove it." Maya didn't hesitate. She spoke calmly, softly, almost taunting. "Look outside." Through the cockpit windows, the F-22s formed a perfect V-shape, an elite formation reserved for only the most skilled and respected pilots. The glint of sunlight against the sleek fighters, the deadly precision, and the sheer audacity of the maneuver spoke volumes. The hijackers froze. They were no longer in control. The skis themselves belonged to someone else. Maya's eyes scanned the monitors. Passengers murmured nervously, oblivious to the deadly precision surrounding them. Some clutched seats instinctively, while others stared at the ceiling, praying silently. The hijackers barked frantic orders, but confusion and fear had begun to crack their confidence. Maya tapped into the cockpit systems again, guiding the captain through subtle maneuvers. "Prepare for a controlled descent. Keep the rate steady. Do not accelerate. Follow my instructions exactly." The captain's hands were slick with sweat, eyes wide. "Understood, Ghost Angel. I trust you." Trust. It was all she had right now. Trust and the fear she had instilled in the hijackers. Outside, the Raptors maintained their deadly grace, poised to act, waiting for a single word from her. Then an alarm blared. The hijackers had triggered an emergency override, attempting to disable the transponder entirely. Radar flickered, sending warnings across the control room. Maya's stomach lurched. If the transponder went offline, air traffic control would lose visibility, and the Raptors' precision margin would shrink dangerously. She pressed a series of keys with lightning speed, bypassing the override, bringing the transponder back online. "You cannot hide from me," she muttered, almost to herself. The hijackers' panic escalated. They realized too late that they were being outmaneuvered by someone they couldn't even see. Maya's voice remained calm, cutting through static like a scalpel. "I am taking control. Attempt any aggressive action and the jets will respond immediately. The choice is yours." Her calm authority contrasted sharply with the chaos inside the cabin. Sweat trickled down the tall hijacker's face and his accomplice's hands shook uncontrollably. "They know everything," the taller one whispered. "They see us. They know our moves." Maya's pulse raced, but her mind remained steady. This was the moment she lived for, the impossible scenario where every decision could mean life or death. Every calculation, every instinct, every ounce of skill she had ever learned converged here. "Flight 377, maintain calm," she instructed, voice cutting through tension. "Passengers must not panic. Minor turbulence is normal. You will land safely if you follow my commands." She could hear faint murmurs among the passengers, a mixture of curiosity and unease, but no one yet realized the gravity of the situation. The hijacker's authority inside the cockpit had collapsed under the weight of her unseen presence. And in that tense moment, Maya realized something chilling. This wasn't just about saving a flight. The hijackers had orchestrated this scenario specifically for her. They knew her name, her reputation, her capabilities, and they wanted to see her fail. Her jaw tightened. Fear and adrenaline surged through her, but she did not falter. She had done the impossible before, in worse conditions, against enemies who had nothing to lose. Now she was poised to do it again, for civilians who didn't even know her name. She whispered under her breath, "Not today." Maya felt a sudden grip on her arm, cold and unyielding. She turned, only to be met by the sharp gaze of federal agents rushing into the operations room. "Step away from the consoles, now," one barked. Her heart skipped a beat, not from fear but disbelief. After everything she had just accomplished, after the lives hanging by threads in the sky above, she was being restrained. "I'm the only person guiding Flight 377 right now. You have to release me," she shouted, voice sharp, cutting through the confusion and static of alarms. The agents exchanged uncertain glances. One hesitated, hand hovering near the radio headset. We can't just." "You will either release me, or you will be responsible for every single life on board," Maya said, voice calm but icy, deadly in its precision. Years of combat missions had taught her one thing above all. Authority was not demanded, it was earned, and it could be projected through command alone. She fixed her stare on the lead agent. "Do you understand?" The agent's jaw tightened. "Protocol." "Protocol is irrelevant when lives are at stake," she snapped, struggling against the cuffs being fastened around her wrists. The metal bit into her skin, but she refused to let it show. Outside, the roar of the Raptors echoed faintly through the windows, their presence a constant reminder of the deadly leverage at her disposal. Inside Flight 377, chaos simmered. The hijackers had realized the planes surrounding them weren't just escort. They were poised, armed, and responsive to Ghost Angel's unseen commands. The taller hijacker slammed a fist against the panel, rage and panic twisting his face. "They can see us. She's controlling everything." The younger accomplice stammered, eyes darting to the cockpit windows. "We can't stop her, can we?" Maya's chest tightened. Their fear was the tool she had relied on for decades. But now, shackled and restrained, she couldn't issue the subtle adjustments and directives the aircraft required. Every second of delay increased the risk of disaster. She felt the weight of helplessness press against her like a physical force. Her mind raced, protocols, override codes, contingency plans, but without access to the consoles, she was trapped. Every instinct screamed at her, "Act now before it's too late." One agent, younger, less confident, shifted nervously. Maybe we should listen to her. She's giving instructions, look at the aircraft. It's responding." The lead agent's face contorted in frustration. "She's a civilian. She could be compromised." Maya took a sharp breath, forcing herself to remain calm. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. "I am not compromised. I am the only person with the skill to ensure Flight 377 lands safely. Release me, or the lives of 186 people will be on your hands." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the radio crackled, the captain's voice, tight with fear but steady enough to pierce the tension in the room. I'm following Ghost Angel's instructions. She's keeping us alive. Please let her guide us." The agents froze, uncertainty flashing across their faces. Maya's heart pounded. Outside, the F-22 pilots were holding formation, wings slicing the sky, ready to engage at her command. She could almost hear them thinking, trusting the voice they recognized instantly, even without visual confirmation. Then the lead agent snapped, "Release her." The cuffs fell away, metal clattering to the floor. Maya didn't hesitate. She lunged back to the console, hands flying across the keyboard, connecting once more with the cockpit. "Flight 377, listen carefully. I am back online. Follow my commands exactly. Do not attempt any maneuvers without coordination. Minor adjustments only." The captain exhaled, relief flooding his voice. Thank God Ghost Angel were listening. Outside, the Raptors held steady, waiting for her instructions. She took a deep breath and began guiding the plane through subtle altitude adjustments, heading corrections, and speed modifications, each one calculated to keep the aircraft stable while buying time for the F-22s to maintain strategic positioning. Inside the cabin, passengers murmured nervously. Some had noticed the erratic movements, others simply felt the tension in the air. The hijackers barked orders, but uncertainty had taken root. They realized, perhaps too late, that control had shifted from their hands. Maya's mind worked furiously, juggling variables: fuel levels, wind speed, aircraft weight, passenger reactions, hijacker movements, and the positioning of the Raptors. Every decision had to be perfect. One wrong calculation, one hesitation, and the plane could spiral into chaos. She glanced at the radar monitors. Flight 377 was responding. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but it was obeying her subtle commands. The F-22s mirrored every adjustment, keeping the hijackers isolated, contained, and terrified. Maya allowed herself a grim smile. They thought they had trapped her, restrained her, removed her from the battlefield. But they had underestimated her resolve, her skill, and her ability to adapt. Even handcuffed, even sidelined, she had never truly been powerless. Her eyes flicked to the hijackers' faces on the cockpit monitors: fear, confusion, desperation. They were beginning to realize they were outmatched. One of them muttered under his breath, She's everywhere. How can this be?" Maya didn't answer. She focused on the plane, on the Raptors, on the delicate dance that would keep everyone alive. Her voice was calm but commanding over the radio. "Maintain minor adjustments. Stay calm. The jets are your escort, not your enemy. Comply and no one will be harmed." The tall hijacker's hands trembled as he pressed buttons, attempting minor resistance, but the plane subtly corrected itself under Maya's unseen guidance. She could hear the panic rising in his voice, see it in every movement through the security cameras she had patched into. And then a sudden thought struck her. The hijackers had orchestrated this scenario with her specifically in mind. Someone had predicted her response, anticipated her moves, designed a trap that would test her limits. That realization sent a chill down her spine, but it also steeled her resolve. She had faced impossible odds before, survived when all hope seemed lost, and emerged victorious. Now she would do it again. Her jaw tightened. "Flight 377, she said, voice cutting through static and panic alike. "I am in control. Follow my instructions exactly. Do not test me. The jets are armed and ready. Any aggressive action will be met with immediate engagement." Silence, fear, obedience. Outside, the F-22 pilots held formation, engines roaring, ready to act. Every second Maya remained in control. Every command she issued was a lifeline to those on board. She had taken back the mission, asserted authority, and reminded everyone, including the hijackers, the captain, and the federal agents, that skill and experience could not be ignored, even in the most unlikely circumstances. And somewhere deep inside, a single thought anchored her determination. The passengers, the crew, the lives of everyone aboard this plane, none of them could fail. Not today. Her hands hovered over the console, fingers ready to act at a moment's notice. Every movement mattered. Every command was life or death. She was Ghost Angel, and no restraint, no misjudgment, no underestimation could stop her now. Maya's hands hovered over the console, fingers poised like a pianist ready to strike, every movement measured, precise. Flight 377's autopilot remained responsive, but the hijackers' sporadic interference required constant attention. Her voice, calm yet authoritative, cut through the static. Flight 377, maintain heading, keep steady. Do not panic, we are regaining control. Inside the cockpit, the captain's knuckles whitened around the yoke. Sweat dripped down his forehead, eyes darting between the flight displays and the rising tension in the cabin. Ghost Angel, I'm following, but there. Focus on my instructions, Maya interrupted, voice sharp, unyielding. Minor adjustments only. Ignore their attempts. They are outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and already losing control. Outside, the Raptors moved in tighter formation, a deadly ballet of steel and firepower. Their presence alone was a psychological hammer, pressing down on the hijackers inside the cabin. The sunlight glinted off their fuselages, glinting like knives, a silent warning that any wrong move would be met with lethal force. Maya calculated everything: speed, wind currents, fuel, passenger weight distribution, the plane's subtle vibrations, and the Raptors' precise positions. Every decision mattered. A single miscalculation could trigger catastrophic turbulence or worse. But she had done this before, albeit under far more hostile skies, and she could feel the rhythm of Flight 377 as if it were an extension of her own body. Inside the cabin, the hijackers argued, panic simmering under their forced composure. "We can't hold them off," the taller one hissed, eyes darting toward the windows. "They're everywhere. How are they controlling the plane from outside?" "There, she's everywhere," muttered the younger accomplice, voice trembling. Fear was gnawing at them, weakening the resolve that had driven their initial plan. Maya seized the moment. She needed to tip the scales entirely in her favor. "Flight 377, prepare for coordinated maneuvers," she said calmly. "Do not deviate. Follow instructions precisely. Trust the process. The jets are here to guide us." The captain's hands shook but obeyed. The plane tilted, slight but deliberate, following the carefully calculated path Maya outlined. Outside, the Raptors mirrored the movements, constricting the hijackers' options, her unseen hand directing a deadly noose in 3 dimensions. She opened a direct line to the F-22 pilots. "Alpha and Bravo, prepare to engage non-lethal disabling measures if necessary. Maintain formation, but be ready to take control. I'm giving them one last chance to comply." Static crackled, then the pilots' voices came through, tense but trusting. "Understood, Ghost Angel, standing by." Inside the cockpit, the hijackers realized the severity of their situation. Their attempts at resistance had failed, their control slipping. We need to do something," one cried, desperation in his tone. Maya's mind raced. Every second wasted, every hesitation allowed, increased the risk of accidental turbulence or panic among passengers. She needed a decisive move. "Flight 377, slight left banking adjustment 2 degrees. Keep speed steady. You'll feel minor turbulence, it's normal. Remain calm. Jets are in formation above." The plane responded, tilting just enough to signal authority without alarming the passengers. The Raptors adjusted in sync, creating a visible barrier between the hijackers and the outside world. Panic inside the cabin deepened. The hijackers realized they were trapped, manipulated, and outmatched. Maya's eyes flicked to the security cameras. The taller hijacker was frantically pressing buttons, attempting minor maneuvers, but the plane subtly corrected itself under her guidance. The younger one froze, realizing their plan was unraveling. Her pulse surged, but her mind remained ice cold. She had to finish this without escalation. One wrong move, and the F-22s might be forced to use lethal force, something she would only consider as a last resort. "Jets maintain formation," she instructed. "Encircle the aircraft non-lethal readiness. Do not fire unless absolutely necessary. I am guiding the flight. Observe." A tense silence settled over the radio channel. The hijackers were trapped, passengers unaware of the deadly ballet just beyond their windows. The captain's voice, shaky but steady, spoke. "Ghost Angel, we're responding. Your instructions are holding. Everyone's staying calm." Maya allowed herself a momentary nod. Trust was established. Control was shifting, but she couldn't let up yet. Too many variables remained. "Prepare for subtle altitude correction 500 feet lower. Adjust gradually. Minor turbulence expected. Do not panic. Passengers must remain seated." The plane complied, tilting gently as the autopilot and manual adjustments worked in tandem. The Raptors mirrored every movement, a deadly symphony of steel and firepower. The hijackers' panic escalated visibly, their confidence shattered, replaced by fear and desperation. Maya leaned closer to the console, voice calm but firm. "Flight 377, continue steady. You are safe if you obey instructions. Any further attempts at aggression will be met with immediate intervention. Compliance is in your best interest." The taller hijacker's hands shook as he realized their situation was irreversible. We can't win," he whispered, almost to himself. "Correct," Maya said quietly but with authority. "You are outmatched, you were overconfident, that ends now." She opened a channel directly to the Raptors' flight lead. "Prepare for interception and containment. Maintain precision, no aggression until I give final clearance. I want them contained but alive. Understand?" "Yes, Ghost Angel," came the pilot's tense reply. "Standing by." Inside the cabin, passengers remained largely unaware of the danger, though a few had noticed subtle turbulence. The hijackers' panic increased as they realized they were being outmaneuvered, trapped in a deadly sky no longer under their control. Maya's mind raced. She could hear the faint radio chatter from the hijackers, internal communications. Their voices were tight with fear, indecision, and the dawning realization that every move they made was anticipated, controlled, and neutralized. She allowed herself a brief, grim smile. They thought they could trap her, underestimate her, restrain her influence. But every action they had taken had been anticipated. Every scenario had been planned. Even handcuffed and doubted by federal agents, she had regained control, orchestrating the safe maneuvering of Flight 377 with precision and authority. Her pulse remained steady, focused, calculating. She knew the final confrontation was coming, the moment where she would need to assert ultimate control, ensure compliance, and neutralize the hijackers without risking passengers' lives. And she was ready. Her fingers hovered over the final sequence on the console, a lifeline to both the plane and the Raptors. She could see the future unfold in fractions of a second, every adjustment, every tilt, every subtle maneuver accounted for. The hijackers had one last chance, one final decision: obey or face the consequences. Maya's voice cut through the tension, calm, steady, deadly precise. "Flight 377, you will comply. Jets are positioned. Any deviation will be met with immediate engagement. You have been warned." And for the first time, silence, not fear, not panic, but quiet acknowledgement. The hijackers understood. They were trapped, outmatched, outmaneuvered. Maya allowed herself a moment to inhale, the first controlled breath since being restrained. The plane, the passengers, the F-22s, they were responding. She had regained control, and the final phase of her operation was about to begin. Maya's pulse was steady, but her mind raced at impossible speed. Every movement of Flight 377, every twitch of the hijacker's hands, every minor turbulence was tracked, calculated, and countered. The Raptor's presence above the airliner was absolute, wings cutting through the sky like blades, but the true leverage rested with her. She was the unseen hand, the voice that dictated life or death. Inside the cockpit, the taller hijacker's confidence had eroded completely. Sweat poured down his face as he frantically tapped buttons, trying one last attempt to regain control. "We can't, they're everywhere, she's everywhere." Maya's voice came through the radio with icy precision. "Flight 377, final warning. Any deviation from my instructions and the jets will take immediate action. Comply and no one will be harmed. Resistance is futile." The captain, trembling but obedient, followed her every command. Ghost Angel were complying. I trust you." Her heart thumped in rhythm with the plane's steady vibrations. The passengers were unaware of the deadly tension swirling just above and within the cockpit, though a few noticed the subtle turbulence. Panic was beginning to ripple through the cabin, but it was muted, tempered by the captain's composed, if nervous, compliance. Maya allowed herself a momentary grim smile. They had underestimated her once, and that mistake had brought them to this point. Trapped in the sky, outmatched, and facing the precision of someone who had never failed in situations like this. She tapped into the hijackers' internal communications, isolating their panic-laden voices. "Listen closely," she whispered, more to herself than them. "It ends now." Then came the decisive maneuver. Maya instructed the captain, "Prepare for gradual altitude reduction. Adjust speed to match the air corridor. Minor turbulence expected. Jets will flank your sides and guide your descent." The hijackers stiffened, realizing their options were disappearing. The younger accomplice's hands trembled over the controls, eyes darting to the cockpit windows, the deadly machines outside glinting in sunlight. The taller one slammed a fist in frustration. "We can't win. We're trapped." Maya's mind raced. Every second mattered. One wrong tilt, one miscalculated adjustment, and passengers could panic, the plane could stall, or turbulence could create chaos. She had done impossible things before, but this was more delicate than any combat scenario. The stakes were civilian lives, not enemy targets. "Jets, maintain formation," she instructed. "Flanking positions only. Prepare for non-lethal intervention. Observe but do not engage until I give final command." "Understood, Ghost Angel," came the pilot's tense but unwavering reply. Inside the cockpit, the hijackers' panic reached a fever pitch. Their plan was unraveling, their authority evaporating. The taller hijacker turned to the younger, desperation in his eyes. She controls everything. The plane, the jets, how?" Maya's pulse surged, but she remained composed. She had anticipated this moment, the exact reactions of trained criminals under extreme psychological stress. She used it to her advantage. "Flight 377, she said over the radio, voice sharp, unwavering. "The situation is contained. Any further resistance will endanger everyone aboard. Comply completely." The plane responded to subtle autopilot adjustments combined with the captain's careful handling. The Raptors mirrored each movement, wings slicing through the sky like predators closing in. The hijackers were paralyzed, caught between panic, obedience, and the sheer impossibility of countering her command. Maya tapped into the plane's internal intercom, voice calm but authoritative. "Passengers, remain seated. Flight 377 is under safe guidance. Please remain calm. Any disturbance is temporary and you are being cared for." The passengers murmured, tension laced with curiosity, unaware of the life-and-death battle unfolding inches away from them. But the hijackers knew the walls of their control were collapsing. One made a desperate move, reaching for a lever that could destabilize the plane. Maya anticipated it instantly. Flight 377, minor left tilt 2 degrees. Maintain speed. Jets flanking your sides. The hijacker froze, realization dawning. The plane subtly adjusted, nullifying his interference. Panic overtook him completely. They're controlling us," he shouted. Maya leaned closer to the console, eyes scanning every detail. "Jets, prepare for final containment. Use minimal force if needed, neutralize hijackers without harming passengers. I'll guide the action." The Raptors adjusted, moving into a tighter formation, signaling dominance, precision, and the inevitability of compliance. The hijackers glanced at each other, desperation flaring, but there was nowhere to run. Every maneuver was anticipated, every escape route blocked. Then the decisive moment. Maya directed the captain, "Reduce altitude slightly, prepare for guided approach to nearest secure airport. Keep passengers calm. Any abrupt action will be met with immediate response from the Raptors." The hijackers' faces went pale. Their plan had unraveled completely. They were trapped in the air with no control, no leverage, and no exit. One of them muttered under his breath, "It's her. She's everywhere." Maya's fingers hovered over the override keys. The moment of truth had arrived. With a few precise commands, she could guide the plane fully into safe airspace, contain the hijackers, and coordinate the Raptors for final enforcement without any risk to civilians. She spoke again, voice cutting through the static and tension like a scalpel. "Flight 377, comply now. Any resistance will be met with immediate non-lethal intervention. You are outmatched. The choice is yours." The hijackers looked at each other, then back at the instruments. Fear, despair, and resignation etched every line on their faces. Slowly, trembling, they relinquished control. Their hands unclenched. Buttons were released. Obedience, born of terror and inevitability, replaced their defiance. Maya allowed herself the briefest exhale. Flight 377 responded immediately, stabilizing under her calculated guidance. The Raptors mirrored every movement, ensuring no opportunity for disruption. The passengers remained unaware, save for the subtle turbulence that was now easing. Inside the cockpit, the captain's voice was shaky but filled with relief. "Ghost Angel, it's over. They've complied. We're stable." Maya nodded, though no one could see her. "Good. Maintain heading and altitude. Jets will escort us to the airport. Passengers must remain calm. You are safe." The Raptors moved into a secure escort pattern, ready to intervene if any sudden moves occurred. Every variable was accounted for, every risk minimized. And for the first time in the past hour, Maya allowed herself a flicker of pride. She had been underestimated, restrained, doubted, but she had turned impossible odds into a controlled, successful operation. Her pulse remained steady, but her mind was already calculating the landing, the debrief, and the questions that would inevitably come. How had a civilian, presumed irrelevant by the pilot who had kicked her off, regained control? How had she orchestrated the Raptors, neutralized the hijackers, and ensured every passenger's safety? The answer was simple, unspoken, and undeniable, because she was Ghost Angel. And even the hijackers, restrained by fear, compliance, and inevitability, could not deny it. The hum of Flight 377's engines was a steady heartbeat beneath Maya's fingers, but her mind raced with every calculation. Glide paths, runway length, wind speed, and the subtle interactions of a plane still carrying terrified passengers and 2 defeated hijackers. Outside, the F-22s maintained a protective shield, their formation precise, wings cutting through the sky with lethal elegance. Maya's pulse synchronized with theirs, every movement a perfect rhythm of life and death. Inside the cockpit, the captain's hands shook as he followed Maya's instructions to the letter. "Ghost Angel, altitude holding steady, approach vector aligned, jets are escorting as you said." "Good, stay calm," Maya replied, voice soft but firm, a lighthouse in the storm. We're almost home. Minor adjustments only. Passengers must remain seated. In the cabin, murmurs of unease had quieted to tense silence. Some noticed the subtle glide, the tilts of the plane, turbulence no longer erratic but guided. Others remained oblivious, trusting an invisible hand to guide them through peril. And in the cockpit, the hijackers slumped, faces pale, every ounce of defiance stripped away by sheer terror and impossibility. Maya allowed herself the briefest moment to glance at the Raptors outside. They mirrored every adjustment, a deadly ballet ensuring Flight 377 remained perfectly contained. One of the pilots opened a secure channel, voice calm but awestruck. "Ghost Angel, you've done the impossible. They won't try anything again." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Don't celebrate yet. We land, we secure, we ensure zero risk. Then we exhale." The hijackers, trembling and silent, realized the futility of resistance. Maya had orchestrated every angle, anticipated every action, controlled every variable. Their plan had failed entirely. The taller man's hands shook as he finally lowered the throttles, voice a whisper. She owns this sky." "Correct," Maya replied without emotion. "You relinquished control. Comply fully for the next 5 minutes until touchdown." The captain's eyes flicked to her monitors. Vector locked, runway visible, jets flanking, all systems ready for final descent. Maya exhaled slowly, maintaining focus. One wrong move now, a misjudged descent, a minor gust of wind unaccounted for, and the lives she had fought to save could be lost in seconds. Her fingers danced over the console, issuing subtle guidance. Flaps, minor speed reductions, calculated adjustments to center of gravity. Every command precise, every action deliberate. The Raptors mirrored her moves perfectly. One adjusted slightly to shield the left wing from crosswind turbulence, the other mirrored the right. It was a flawless display of air dominance, not aggression, but precision, control, and protection. Inside the cabin, passengers clutched armrests, unaware of the gravity of their situation, unaware that every tilt, every vibration, every minor correction had been controlled by a woman they couldn't see, a pilot the world had once dismissed. Maya's eyes flicked to the hijackers. Their faces were masks of panic, resignation, and awe. They had witnessed the impossible. Flight 377 was theirs in theory, but in reality, Ghost Angel had never relinquished control. They had been outmaneuvered psychologically, tactically, and completely. "Flight 377, begin final approach," Maya instructed. "Follow glide path, maintain minor altitude adjustments, touch down softly. Jets maintain escort until we are fully cleared on the runway." The captain nodded, muscles tense but obedient. He followed her guidance, tilting the plane gradually, aligning perfectly with the runway. Outside, the Raptors held formation, protective, ready to act if necessary. Maya's pulse raced, but her focus never wavered. This was the moment she had trained for, the culmination of every mission, every emergency, every impossible scenario she had faced. And she was about to prove, once again, why her call sign, Ghost Angel, was whispered with reverence and fear alike. The runway lights grew closer, stretching like ribbons beneath the descending aircraft. Maya calculated the final flare, the delicate touch needed to absorb the plane's momentum while keeping passengers secure. Every subtle adjustment mattered. One misstep, one error in judgment could undo everything. "Prepare for flare now," she commanded. The captain's hands moved instinctively, following her precise guidance. Flight 377's nose rose slightly, absorbing the landing's momentum. The main gear kissed the runway gently, tires squealing softly against asphalt. Relief swept through the cabin, passengers instinctively gripping armrests, some exhaling audibly. Maya continued her subtle adjustments as the plane slowed, the jet-assisted brakes and autopilot synergy ensuring stability. Outside, the Raptors mirrored each move, wings angled to signal completion, escorting the plane safely to its designated parking position. Finally, Flight 377 came to a complete stop. Silence filled the cabin for a heartbeat before passengers erupted into applause, cheers, and tears. Relief, gratitude, and disbelief mingled in the recycled air. The hijackers sat, defeated, restrained, and fully aware they had faced someone far beyond their reckoning. Maya exhaled deeply, hands finally leaving the console. The adrenaline that had coursed through her veins for over an hour began to ebb, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of a mission completed perfectly. She allowed herself a small smile, knowing the lives aboard had been preserved because no one had underestimated her this time. The F-22s performed a slow victory pass, wings cutting through the golden light of late afternoon, a silent acknowledgement of the precision and skill that had saved Flight 377. Federal agents, previously skeptical, approached cautiously, awe in their eyes. "Ghost Angel, we didn't believe it," one admitted. Maya's gaze was steady, unwavering. "Doubt me again and people die," she said quietly. "Today no one did, that is all that matters." Inside the terminal, passengers disembarked, faces pale but smiling, tears of relief streaked across cheeks. Crew members embraced one another. And somewhere above the runway, the F-22 pilots shared a brief nod through the headset, silent acknowledgement of the coordination, trust, and skill that had made the impossible routine. Later in the debriefing room, Maya stood tall. Questions would come: how she had taken control from offsite, how she had coordinated jets, how she had neutralized the hijackers without a single life lost. But the answers were simple: skill, experience, precision, and a refusal to let fear dictate outcomes. Her call sign, Ghost Angel, had earned its legend once more. The pilot who had dismissed her, who had thought her irrelevant, would never forget the name. The world might have doubted her, restrained her, underestimated her, but Flight 377 would never forget. The passengers, the crew, the terrified hijackers, and even the elite pilots who had followed her commands would remember the precision, the courage, and the authority of the woman who had saved 186 lives in a single, impossible hour. Maya's phone buzzed quietly, a message from one of the F-22 pilots. "Nice work, Ghost. You owned the sky today." She allowed herself a private smile. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind the satisfaction of a life saved, a mission accomplished, and the unspoken truth that underestimating her was the gravest mistake anyone could make. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the tarmac, Maya Carter, Ghost Angel, walked away from Flight 377, unseen, uncelebrated by the world, yet fully aware that she had once again turned near-certain disaster into cinematic triumph. The plane was safe, the passengers were alive, the hijackers were contained, and the legend of Ghost Angel had just grown louder, echoing across the sky she commanded.